Okay, good evening and welcome to the Planning Board's virtual meeting of February 8th, 2022. This meeting is being recorded because it's a remote meeting. We will start with a roll call vote to identify the people in the room. So I'll start with Linda.
Here.
Nathan.
Here.
Andrew.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
And this is Burton. I am here, and that's the whole board for the evening, as two of our members could not make it tonight. The first thing we are beginning the meeting with is a continuation of a site plan review on the application of the Middlesex School under section 11.8 of the zoning bylaw for two modular buildings, each containing 2 3-bedroom units for faculty housing at 1400 Lowell Road, parcel 1533. We've got some revised documents from the applicant, including revised plans. With that, I think I would turn it over to Mr. Crozier to run us through those, or Mr. McCune.
I think Mr. McCune will go through. Can you go through those for us, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us here tonight. Want to thank the board for their comments. It was well received. The submission from Niche was submitted, I know, earlier today. I don't know if everybody had a chance to review it. I think the big changes visually are we did condense some of the parking so that instead of individual parking spaces that were separate, we did combine the two middle units so that they're now together. So there's 4 spaces together, kind of maximize the green space and also give the grass there a chance to grow. So really appreciate that comment.
Steve, yeah. I'm sorry, it's Steve Ventresca. Do you want me to share screen and walk through? That
would be, yes, Steve,
yeah.
That would be great. And thanks. Yeah. And Steve Ventresca is here again from Niche Engineering. And yeah, Steve, if you want to go through those, that would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So good evening again. My name's Steve Ventresca with Niche Engineering. We did submit plans. We actually submitted them yesterday. I think yesterday was Monday to the board after receiving some comments from Elizabeth. And just we can quickly flip through. You've seen this presentation, but as Steve McCown was stating, one of the comments that we received back from the board was consolidating the parking spaces for this unit and this unit, which we did here, shown on the plan, and then we provided accessible walkways, or excuse me, we provided a walkway to get to the units. So that was one of the comments. Another one of the comments was requesting 110-volt outlets for the parking spaces. And this would allow if potentially any of the occupants of these units had an electric vehicle that they could plug in using a level 1 charger. It may be difficult to see here, but we're providing an electrical conduit from the transformer here and running it along the face or the fronts, I'm going to call them, of the units. And in each one, we have a little box that shows a 110-volt outlet. So there'll be one box for 2 spaces. Each box electrical outlet will have 2 plugs that you can plug into, again, for EV charging. And again, that was one of the comments that we received from the board. Another comment from the building inspector was about building height. We provided a sketch that's not shown here that indicated that the heights of the buildings will be less than 35 feet. And I don't believe that we've received any comments back. Either way, I assume that it's been accepted, but would like to hear from Elizabeth at some point whether that's been accepted or not. This gives a better indication of the electrical conduit that I was discussing earlier. That's highlighted in blue here. And then you can start to see another comment was about landscaping, and we'll flip to the next sheet. But we provided 2 flowering trees or potentially trees that could bear fruit, so allow for some type of habitat or allow for birds to have a little snack in the course of their day. So we've shown a couple of trees here. There was a comment about maybe providing a tree here. We'd like to keep this open for stormwater management and for snow storage. Which is why we showed the tree over here. We want to provide a little bit of open space as well. Keep that area open. Another comment concerned, I think came from the public, was discussing the color of the house. The applicant would like to keep white as the color, which fits in with the rest of the house's or a majority of the houses along Lowell Road, in addition to the color theme that's within the campus itself. So we're going to keep that color as white on the structure, both structures. And then landscaping, I kind of alluded to it just a few minutes ago. A couple of board members had questions about landscaping. So we're providing, again, these 2 trees here. And then along the fence line, we're providing landscaping along the fence. And we're giving some options here for the trees, the flowering trees, and then we're giving a couple of options for plantings that could go in front of the fence itself. And then the last comment was associated with the fence height itself. And I apologize, this does not have the image that I wanted, but what we're providing on both units, or both structures, I should say, is an 8-foot fence on the end. So here and here, and the same here, 8-foot fence, tall high fence here, and an 8-foot fence here. But in the interior, between the 2 units and along the face or the front, those could be anywhere between 4 and 6 feet. And so again, that was based on a comment that we received from the town planner. So we believe we've addressed the comments that the board had and that the town planner had. Engineering has signed off on our stormwater design. And I don't know if there's any other outstanding comments, and if there are, I believe they would probably be part of the conditions if the board so chooses to close and approve tonight. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, or maybe even Steve McCown could answer as well.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen.
Sure.
When
We're proposing 8-foot tall fence here, and then an 8-foot tall fence here. And as you know, that's allowed under the regulations.
Mhm.
And there was, and the reason for the 8-foot fence on this side is for privacy,
Right.
from here and also from adjacent,
Parking area.
yeah, and parking areas. But then in the interior here, and then along the, I'm going to call it the front, this fence line here, these 2 areas, we gave an option of either 4 feet high or 6 feet high. And so that would make it a little bit more open. If you're standing inside one of these yard areas, it doesn't feel like you're in an enclosed area with the 8-foot fence all around. So just to give a little bit more, I guess, light and air and a little bit more visual outside.
Yeah, and
from
then
those
effectively,
perspectives.
I mean, it will practically be the front door for these houses, right?
Exactly.
On that note, so thank you very much for running through that. And I want to start out by saying thank you very much for providing the conduit for the 110. Level 1 is a great, it solves problems. Obviously,
Mhm.
level 2 is even better, but level 1 can make an electric car work just perfectly fine, especially for somebody that lives where they work. So that's a great change, and I really appreciate that. And I'd also comment that it was a suggestion of one of the public comments we had. I think the one question I have is around, well, I think with respect to building height, I think there's a condition in the draft decision that would be checked by the building inspector once the building's framed. So I think that's what it is. Then with respect to maybe thinking about fence height and landscaping plans, overall, it's pretty limited amount of landscaping with the 2 trees. And maybe one of the things that can be done, I'm not sure, with some of those fence plantings is help with the visuals of that 8-foot fence and the like. Those grasses that you were showing, probably a great option. Do you know how big those get?
Those get, I'm going to say, knee height approximately by the time you're growing it, and that's usually in the fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'd be about
But
that
ones
height.
that look kind of like that, but they get to be about 5 feet tall. But it would just be a suggestion for me. And Elizabeth, if you have any other comments on the landscape, that can be a great way to create a stepped, a stepped massing, really, that can make a 8-foot fence feel like less make it stand out less in the landscape. Elizabeth, did you have any other comments on the landscape plan?
No, I think that's a great comment. But Linda did call my attention. I think it's on sheet C200. Steve, there's a leftover note where the parking used to be before it got combined, saying that that green area is asphalt.
Oh, okay.
So just
Thank you.
something
Yeah,
you'll have to
we can-
take care of.
Yeah, we can update that.
Yeah, no
We can,
problem.
is it okay to remove the note and just send the plans back to you with the same date and it'll
Yes.
just reference that? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So with that change, Burton, in the draft decision, there was a condition requiring those spaces to be put together. So I would just delete that condition.
Okay. And that's what it is, that C, let's see, what section 11, the response on 11.87C. No, that's,
For the decision,
yeah.
it was condition 6. And yes, it under
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
11.8.7.1C.
Yep.
So I would
Please
just
delete it.
change that to that they already did it to reflect
Yeah,
that.
okay. And you've already made that change. Got it. Okay. I didn't have any other questions, and I don't think that there were remaining issues that were not addressed by town departments. Elizabeth, unless I missed something going through the draft decision, please highlight that. Otherwise, certainly if any other members of the board have questions or comments or concerns, the floor is open. Okay. Then what I would propose is that we have a motion to approve the what is now the draft decision and issue the decision with the edits that were reflected in the last draft. Elizabeth, that draft went to everybody, not just me, right? You're on mute, but the ones with the, yeah, with the.
Yes,
We
it went
also-
to everybody in the packet.
Okay. So does anybody want to make that motion? If not, I've got the language handy and I can make that.
I've got it open, so I'll go
Okay,
for it.
thanks.
I move to approve the application of Middlesex School for 4 faculty housing dwelling units under section 11.8.7 of the zoning bylaw at 1400 Lowell Road, parcel 1533, based on the findings and conditions of approval in the board's decision dated February 8th, 2022, and authorize the chair, clerk, and town planner to sign the decision.
I second that. Nope. All right. Well, Nancy, let's give that one to Andrew. As seconding that, I'll now
Okay.
take a roll call. Linda.
Yes.
All right. And Nathan,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes,
and I'm a yes. So all present vote in favor. So thank you very much to the applicant. And thank you for making those changes in response to the feedback from us, and good luck with the project.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, that brings us to administrative business. So we have a discussion around developing rules and regulations for site plan review. We have we'll go through the draft annual town meeting public hearing presentations and the Thoreau Depot Business District zoning facts. We've got some draft minutes, and I am hoping that we will be done by 9 o'clock. So let's get started with the site plan rules and regulations discussion. As Elizabeth pointed out in her materials to us at a prior meeting, what was proposed is that we all look at some of the representative examples that are on the planning board page of site plan rules and regs, or some of the bylaws or that had some example language, and think about which issues we wanted to focus in on. And then we would each sort of have homework to work on those particular issues. Yes, Kristen, did you have a question?
can we also discuss the timeline too? Because I think that's going to influence what we take on.
Yes, I mean, I think when we talked about it before, we were talking about sort of progressing it as a regular item on our meetings, but I don't think we set a deadline when we would have it done by.
Then that's okay. Then I guess I'm just thinking that, our term ends.
Mhm.
And so I want to make sure that, we take things appropriately so that we can pass them off at the end of our term type thing.
Or we can just buckle down and have it all done by May.
Well, that's the alternative. So that's what I kind of wanted to know. How aggressively are we going to pursue this? So good thought.
Well, and and it was on one of the planning board. It's one of the planning board's goals, and I took that to be the current board. What I mean, I know these things always take vastly longer than you'd anticipate, but I think if we break it down and we use some examples, it's not going to be that much. And to that end, I kind of wanted to ask Elizabeth some questions. I had the chance before the meeting to look at several of the examples, but what I didn't have a chance to do was go back and look at our existing subdivision, or excuse me, not subdivision, our site plan, the provisions of the zoning bylaw pertaining to site plan. And one of the things I noticed about the examples is, in most cases, a large portion of it was addressing sort of the administrative, here's how the review process goes, here's the planning board's authority, et cetera, et cetera. Don't we already have that in our zoning bylaw, that process?
Yes, to a minor degree.
Okay.
So if you notice in the rules and regulations, it's and that process part will be something that I will draft.
There's where I kind of wanted to go.
Yes, I will do that part. It's a little bit more, explanatory, but not. So with the site plan rules and regs, you will be required to hold a noticed public hearing to adopt them. So it's the same thing kind of with the zoning bylaw, or let's say the tree bylaw rules and regs. You don't want to put something in there that's very specific, like you need to submit 11 copies of the application, because then you would have to hold a public hearing whenever you wanted to amend that. So it'll be a little bit more explanation than what's in the zoning bylaw, but it won't be that specific. That type of information will remain on the application checklist itself.
Okay, great. But generally speaking, if we remove sort of that administrative and process portions of it, I think what we're looking at, this is where I hope we just start having an open discussion, is probably 3 or 4 substantive sections that are describing the criteria that we would be applying to the review. And the things that jumped out at me were that wouldn't already be addressed at some level in the bylaw is landscape, sustainability, and design. Those were the 3 things that jumped out, and I think have been part of our discussion that we would want to address. And that's not a whole lot in terms of actual words on the page. It seemed to me in the examples we had, I mean, we could probably cover those 3 topics in 3 pages of rules and regs. Sustainability may be a little more complex.
Yeah, so I had a chance to just email with Haley a little bit back and forth, and for the next meeting, the discussion will be whether sustainability is its own topic, or whether sustainability is inserted in each of the different topics. So so there's a landscaping topic, and in there it's going to talk about sustainable landscape. There's going to be, I would think you're also going to have a topic on parking, and maybe like alternative transportation, or pedestrian connectivity, or so there's a lot of other different topics that you could insert. But I agree that this first run out the gate does not have to be, you know, so inclusive of everything, because
Mhm.
it's a working document, and a noticed public hearing, it only takes 3 weeks, and probably $100 to put it in the paper. So as issues come up, or what, that's a topic or an issue that we didn't think about, let's pull stuff together and put that in. I see that happening, whether it's quarterly, just every quarterly kind of think about the site plans that the board's reviewed, and the conversations, and see if the rules and regs reflect those conversations.
Those are all great points, and with respect to this, and it's just like we did a 1-year checkup, I think it was, on the tree preservation rules, bylaw, and rules and regs, and yeah, maybe this is even more frequently. Maybe it's every 6 months or something.
Which your tree bylaw rules and regs, I think the public hearing, I'm going to guess for that is somewhere in March or
Okay.
April. The land manager he's been writing incredible notes and ideas and comments. So he and I are going to meet and then present those to the board first. So, off topic, but just to give everybody a heads up, that's coming down the pike as well.
Okay. Does anybody else have thoughts on sort of the general buckets that we'd be focused on? Kristen, I see.
Yeah, I definitely thought parking also, and I just want to think a little bit about kind of the end product that we're trying to end up with. I think we have all those examples of neighboring towns, rules and regulations, and knowing that Elizabeth is going to tackle the administrative sections and things like that. So we have the bylaw itself that calls out the certain sections that we are reviewing, right? 11.8.5. And I think what we're trying to do is add some detail about what applicants can provide around those sections. Is that correct? It would help to, because I read the existing bylaws, or excuse me, the rules and regs from the other towns, and I was like, I didn't find them as helpful as I thought I was going to be.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that it would be an easier job to cut and paste from them,
Right.
and I don't
Well,
think we're going to be doing that.
Right, and in fact, I definitely saw similar language to 11.8.5 that we have,
Right.
So several, so so if what we're trying to do is say we've got, I can't remember if it's A through H in 11.8.5, and what we're trying to do is make sure that it's clear how the applicant could meet those, or not meet, I don't know if that's the right term, but if we could kind of clarify that, that would help me to think about kind of the type and breadth of language that need to be considered.
Okay.
So to your point, Kristen, kind of just going through A through H, you would have for A, you're going to have stormwater drainage, and more than likely, that's not going to be a huge section. It's going to hit on certain topics, but then reference the stormwater regs from Concord Public Works. So that one's fairly, that one's not that hard. You have sound and sight buffers, which goes to landscaping. And then, the question is talking about whether there's a section on noise. And so I think for some site plans, again, just it's a few items, like mechanicals should be, away from residential properties, should be screened and with sound. So those are the types of things that I think you're looking at. And then and I'm not sure how preservation of views, light and air gets wrapped into a topic, but then again, you know, you have parking and layout, and you know, it's parking, driveways, layout, and providing that guidance of you know, driveways, you know, layout so they don't conflict with other existing driveways, and the same thing, you know, there should be a section, a topic on lighting, because you know there's a lot of more specific details that we can provide on lighting. You know,
Would
nowhere
that
in the
have to
zoning
do with-
bylaw does it say dark sky compliant. And
Okay, but that would have to do with E for adequacy of method of exterior lighting?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I was thinking, is that for each of the A through H, we're making specific requests to the applicant, so that it's not a moving target when they show us things.
I think that's a really good idea. And I think ideally, yeah, your applicant's not surprised by questions or by requests. And because we've already made it clear how we think these things are addressed. I don't think we should get too hung up on, you know, having to track a particular rule or to the language of the existing bylaw in terms of this. These will be the things that will be deemed to meet this, because that might get clunky. But I do like the idea of laying it out based upon the existing sections. Though we might have, Elizabeth, you said earlier about sustainability, that's going to be threaded through lots of things.
no, that was a question Haley had, whether you know, whether sustainability was going to be threaded through, you know, these different topics, or whether because it kind of just crosses over to a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the
Did she indicate
criteria as
to
far
you-
as, oh, I'm sorry, Nathan, what?
Did she indicate to you what her preference on that was? I mean, in my mind, having it thread through rather than its own section makes a little more sense.
I think there's opportunities to thread certain things through, but I think to Kristen's point, you know, it's an actual criteria. So I think there are some things that kind of just don't fit anywhere else, and you know, so whether that's, you know, EV charging or solar or I don't know, what are some other
I mean, could you talk about like plant watering, low water usage, things like that within the landscaping plans? Is that an appropriate element to talk about?
oh
I just
yeah,
don't- yeah.
definitely. You know, so under landscaping, another sustainability measure that would be there would be,
Mhm.
you know, to look at you know, more drought tolerant, you know, or low water plants, except for, you know, small, like flower beds near the entrance or something, you know, those types of things.
Mhm.
So what would help me before I started working on homework is, you know, would it be a good use of the time for this board while we have Elizabeth on the phone to just kind of brainstorm a couple of bullets? She's like rattling off some things. We're thinking of some things. Could we rattle off a few of the bullets, just kind of the high level topics under each of the A through H? And then we could see if there's some that are repeated through that then get regrouped, you know,
Definitely.
those main topics.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
then we might be able to divide them up a little bit. I'm just afraid if I go off on my own, I'm not going to come back with anything more useful.
No, that's what so that's exactly what I was hoping to do, is just have like each board member, you know, rattle off the, you know, their list, you know, write it down. If somebody already said landscaping, you don't need to say landscaping again, but then, you know, have this list, and then, you know, have everybody take, you know, one or two of those topics to to research and just pull things out, or think about some of the site plan that you've reviewed recently and how you've addressed that topic or that criteria, and pull out some guidance, or just come up with some idea about that to bring back and have the board discuss.
I think that's a
Linda?
really good idea. And I guess looking through, I'm wondering whether we should sort of assign out 11.85 subsections, or the sort of the general ideas that we want to make sure we've fleshed out in these rules and regs. So sustainability. I mean, we've got 11.85H, incorporation of sustainability principles. Somebody could take that with that in mind and figure out, okay, so how do we flesh that out? It seems like design, the other big thing that jumped out of the examples was design, which could be 11.85F for the relationship of the structures to existing buildings, other community assets. Parking is obvious, that goes directly to parking. Landscape maybe is also that 11.85F. And
So I think, Burton, if each board member just wants to blurt out their bullets. I know Linda has a question or a comment, but we can, I can write them down and then run back through them, and
okay.
I think that's a good
Let's do
place
that.
to start.
All right, I'll go last. I'll take what's left. Or Linda, do you have a comment, or you want to start?
Well, no, I had something sort of on topic, but not in the A to H.
Okay.
And so two questions. One is, when I was going through various things for various towns, I saw that some are starting to talk about affordable housing. And I don't know if that should be, it's not in the A to H, I don't believe. And I don't know if we want to consider that. And then the other thing I saw, which was more in the administrative part, is that some towns ask the applicants for impact statements. And I just wanted to sort of throw those two things out there of, I don't know, those aren't in what we're talking about right now, and maybe things for consideration at some other point, or consideration now if we want to do anything with those subjects. That's what I wanted to bring up before we went on to the A to H.
So to answer, so how some communities adopt their site plan, it may not be rules and regs, they may actually adopt it as an ordinance. So like a city adopts it as an ordinance, where as part of that ordinance, they put in affordable housing requirements. So how Concord's zoning bylaw is laid out, including affordable housing criteria would not be within the site plan rules and regs, or it's not part of your site plan review. So if a commercial project comes in and you're reviewing, the site plan, affordable, but affordable housing or even affordable commercial space, none of that comes into play. For a PRD, it may come into play, but you've already defined affordable, the affordable housing requirements in the zoning bylaw. And for like the Throw Depot, zoning, you're defining the affordability component in the bylaw. So it wouldn't be part of the rules and regs.
But it's more of, if the project encompasses affordable housing, then these are rules and regulations that cover that affordable housing. It's not, so it's sort of like, if it's already decided that you have to have affordable housing, these are things that you have to do in terms of If there are amenities associated with it, say you get a parking space, then the affordable housing units get equivalent parking spaces to the market rate units, that kind of thing, as opposed to saying you must have affordable housing in, that's already been determined once it gets to the site review, is the way I've been seeing it. I don't know.
Okay.
Just, we can think of, I mean, I don't think we need to decide that tonight. Or I can get you an example of that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it's not the affordable housing requirement, capital A. It's has to do with site layout, amenities for affordable housing need to be the same as market rate units.
Or things like the quality of the construction has to be equivalent, or the exterior appearance has to be equivalent to the market rate units, things like that would.
Right.
Does this
Yeah.
mean like no pour door like they do in New York City?
Exactly.
That kind of thing? Is that kind of what you're thinking as far as
Poor
Well, that's
door.
how it's being used. It's not being used to say, if you're doing X, then you must have affordable housing, but it's already, you have affordable housing units. This is how they have to be treated in terms of for the site rules.
So I can tell you that at least for affordable housing units that are going to be included on the town's subsidized housing inventory are 10%. The state mandates that those units have to be, undistinguishable from the outside.
Oh, okay.
The construction quality has to be similar. And when I say similar, the affordable unit, it has to have, the market rate units have a dishwasher, the affordable unit has a dishwasher. The market rate units might have a Bosch, and the affordable units might have a Whirlpool, but they can't strip the interior of an affordable unit. So that's already a requirement
It's
under
already-
state law.
okay.
But let me think about that one a little bit more.
Okay.
And what was the second one? I'm sorry.
Impact statements.
Impact
Oh,
statement. I don't know.
Yeah, I that's a new one for me, so I'd have to look into what that entails.
Okay.
Because at least and to Kristen's point, you talk about the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site, location of driveways in relationship to traffic. That's where I think the board can provide a little bit more input on like traffic studies. When is a traffic study going to be, should be part of your site plan application? Not every project requires a traffic study, but some, a lot do. So is there guidance so that somebody's aware of that before they file and they get into the process, and it's like, oh, well, we need a traffic study. Well, that takes months. And as the board knows, if the traffic study isn't done at the appropriate time of year, then there's fault found in that as well. So so that might be also another topic to look into.
Okay. Thank you.
Linda, just real quick on the impact statements. I remember reading that, but and lots of other the other one examples talked about there needs to be a statement regarding the impact on a particular thing, as Elizabeth just ran through. Can you recall the scope of what the impact statements covered in the
Not
example
all-
we had?
I think some of them might have been environmental and some of them may have been in terms of economic.
Okay. I will be honest, I've been underwhelmed oftentimes by applicants who are talking about the, in our current zoning bylaws, when they need to talk about the economic impact on the town. And there's sort of a perfunctory, well, these houses are going to cost X, so that's much tax dollars, and so it's going to be net neutral. And it always just seems like a requirement that gets not a lot of thought, information, but we also are not in a position to really challenge the information we get. You know what I'm referring to. So what I would just be cautious about is sort of a general impact statement. The things like specific traffic study impacts and things like that, I think work pretty well. But okay. Now we're going to do a round robin, and I'm going to start with Nathan, and then I'm going to go to Andrew and Kristen, and we'll go around. Which topics do you think, Elizabeth? What I'm going to ask is which topics we should be specifically addressing in the site plan rules, and what people would like to focus on. Right? We go here.
Yeah, if just throw out your ideas and
all right,
start the list, and then you can go from there.
All right, Nathan, what gets your?
I will bring it up again, the EV charging thing, but I don't know if that should go under D or under H.
Okay, EV charging.
Well, I think that's one of those elements that would be in, under a separate sustainability topic, because I mean, it doesn't fit in landscaping or lighting or design or, so I think that fits under that parent topic of sustainability. Are there any other topics you can think of?
It could go in the parking one, right? I mean,
yeah, that's what
yeah.
I wasn't sure if it would fit under the parking one or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think that's great.
But you've already hit on, so if you can go out and look at examples of how we incentivize or encourage or require EV parking and what that looks like. Okay, Andrew.
I can look at landscaping.
Okay.
So under the landscaping topic, usually you find some information about fencing. Middlesex School, I can understand why they want an 8-foot fence on the southern side adjacent to the ball field, because it does rise up. But I disagree. In general, I disagree with 8-foot fences. Unless there's a specific, a specific issue you're trying to address that an 8-foot fence can address, but in general. So usually landscaping, the topic of landscaping does also hit on fences.
And
any other thoughts on topics though?
Well,
not that you have to take them
while
on.
while you're talking about fencing, and I think this might go into design, but a discussion about materials. There seems to be lately, fences that are actually just plastic walls going up in town, and I think that might be something that would be addressed. These vinyl solid fences that are you see a lot of in there. Anyway.
Well, I
preferred.
like this idea of brainstorming, but then I want to make sure, we talk about to what degree we're trying to regulate afterward.
Yeah. Okay. And on the brainstorming, Kristen, is there a topic that you would have a particular interest in?
I was going to let everybody else choose, because there's some that we probably don't need a whole lot more with. Like you said, there was kind of a limited amount of things that we're trying to do. I mean, I'm interested in the parking, but that's because I'm interested in the bigger picture of updating our parking requirements and shared parking, and that's not going to happen kind of simultaneously with that.
Well, I think some of the examples, right, when we talked about adequacy of parking, right, and I can't remember if I was looking at rules and regs or some of the example zoning bylaws, but the circumstances under which parking requirements could be modified, right, in terms of shared parking or having a percentage equivalent of bicycle parking and the like. So maybe we can think, if you're okay with it.
I'm interested in learning more about that.
Okay. Linda, how about you?
What is left?
Well, there's a lot.
Disposal of refuse.
Did I take Nathan's? Because he came up with EV charging, which was associated with parking and others. So I don't want to, I can currently work on that with them.
I mean, they could potentially be related, but not necessarily the same. If you're talking about like parking volume, that's different than,
Okay,
EV
I just want to
charging
make sure I
requirement.
didn't steal something you already claimed.
So under parking would also be like design of parking lots and driveways. Some communities require that for the end parking space next to a landscape island, instead of the space being 9 feet wide, it has to be like 10 feet wide, so people aren't getting out of their car into the landscape island.
Okay, and what about garages? Would that also be in parking, or is that something different?
Well, so you have to remember, site plan is 90% commercial projects.
Yeah.
You did amend the zoning bylaw to require site plan approval for PRDs, but there's very, very few residential projects. And even with the Thoreau Depot proposed zoning, somebody would go through site plan approval. It's going to be that combination of the commercial and residential. So what are your thoughts about as far as like including guidance on garages?
I mean, it was more like when we did the PRDs, we had a lot of discussion about single family garage versus or single garages and less bulk and things like that. But I think that's addressed in our PRD requirements, I hope, and kind of how we worded those.
And that's probably more like what you would see in single family or townhouse style developments, right? I think here you're talking, if you're talking about a garage, you're probably talking about some sort of structured parking, but it could also be, where the parking is located, right? Just like we did with the Thoreau Depot. So Linda?
Would that, what about pedestrian, bicycle? I don't know if that is within traffic and parking or could be on its own.
No, I mean, I think pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, and that's part of that multimodal aspect of site plan approval. And yeah, it can fit under whether it's whether it's
anything from accommodating bicycles,
in
terms of
I
parking, to pedestrian and access in terms of handicap and the elderly and
so I think like bicycle and pedestrian connectivity.
Okay.
So I know some rules and regs talk about how the pedestrian sidewalks get connected. And to Kristen, to your point, this is another area where things cross over is in parking. Some rules and regs say for every 10 spots you have to have landscape island of a certain size so that, you know, an actual shade tree can grow. Or, you know, parking lots of a certain size, you actually have to have pedestrian walkways so that people aren't, you know, walking through a sea of parking like 300 Baker Ave. It perplexes me that huge parking lot, there's not one pedestrian sidewalk within that whole entire parking lot. So that's, you know, that would be that pedestrian, I think, connectivity point.
Okay. And so Linda, I think generally, maybe the task is to generally think about pedestrian and bicycle and connectivity issues, and they may thread through the, you know, just looking at the sections that might thread through language we could add to subsection B, convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement, or you know, relationship relationship of the structures to the surrounding community. Those are things I think that could be going in there as well in H, sustainability. So if you go out there and you think of, okay, here are the 3 ideas that we want to incorporate, we could figure out how to thread them in. I think I'd like to focus on design, you know, just because I know good design when I see it. just kidding. I really want to shy actually away from defining specific architectural elements and things like that, because first of all, it's a town-wide piece. But one of the examples I saw just did a little bit better of a job fleshing out that something that fits in with the character of the neighborhood. And I think that that's really what we want to have, to be able to ask applicants, okay, so how do these architectural designs respond to the buildings adjacent or around them? And I think that's a much more prudent way to go than saying, you know, everything has to have you know, gray shingles and blue shutters, right? And look like, you know, the Vineyard or something like that.
And I think you also included maybe a bullet or 2 regarding materials, Burton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how did the design guidelines fit in, which we now have? We have the West Concord design guidelines and potentially the Thoreau Depot business design guidelines that are specific to those business districts. Would we be creating another set of guidelines?
It's a really good question, and maybe what we would say is that the design piece would apply where there were otherwise wasn't a specified design guidelines. So Baker Avenue, maybe where the design piece applies, or other commercial areas that are not within those districts.
But the site plan rules and regs would definitely reference those existing design guidelines for those specific areas.
Yeah, there you go. So again, it's a really good question.
So a couple of the others, which, you know, I can try and tackle, as well as the stormwater drainage and lighting.
Okay. And we, of course, have 2 members who I'm going to guess will be interested in maybe some of the sustainability stuff, but if they have other ideas as well, they can chime in at the next meeting.
Or maybe Haley or Kate will want to take on either stormwater drainage or lighting. I'll be happy to give either one of them up, or both of them up.
Okay.
So the things that I will look into, you know, from Linda's comment are that affordable housing site layout piece, the impact statement piece. I will look into, you know, like the as far as the impact piece, whether it's, you know, like traffic impacts, or as Kristen said, you know, economic, or Burton said, economic impacts, or see if any other communities have tried to provide guidance on, you know, providing information with the site plan on those types of things. So I'll look into those items.
Yeah.
And so is the due date, we want to bring back whatever we have the next meeting and kind of
Yeah.
continue to bring stuff back each meeting?
Yeah, I think each of us, we've sort of got our areas and flesh out. I mean, you don't need to start drafting language, but flesh out what the ideas you'd want to cover that you think you've seen maybe some good examples of, or maybe break new ground with, whatever it may be. Bring that back to the board. We'll have a discussion, build consensus, and then we can from there go to actually drafting it. Now, if you go out, of course, and you find a terrific example of parking, a comprehensive parking reg that covers, design of lots and flex parking and all of that, and then you say this is the platonic ideal of a parking site plan review, bring it, and we can do it. We can just consider that. Does that make sense? So does everybody understand where we're going from here? Okay.
So as far as Kristen's comment on time, because of the annual town meetings, public hearings, and school vacation week, your next meeting is actually next Tuesday, the 15th.
I won't be there.
Then you have the March 8th public hearing, and then your next regular meeting is March 22nd. So I don't know if everybody's going to have time between now and next Tuesday to pull something together.
That is probably
unlikely. Let's just be realistic.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's do this.
What I'd like to propose is that everybody, starts, doing their homework. And if you find, something, send me an email. And if, like Burton said, if it's a particular community and you found something, planners have a really wonderful motto they've all adopted: work smarter, not harder. So I can contact the planners in those communities, actually probably get the Word document, and begin to pull all these little bullets together into at first it's going to look like, what were the things in college and high school you had to do? Outlines. At first it'll probably start looking like an outline, and then it'll kind of grow into an actual document. So.
Right. That sounds like a good approach. But you don't have to have this all completed board by next Tuesday. Maybe that March 8th. Did you say March 8th meeting?
No, that's your annual.
That's the hearing.
That's your annual town meeting public hearing. So it would be March 22nd. So okay. I'm going to expect that I will have a really robust outline / document looking thing by the 22nd, as people just send me off an email with, oh, here's something I found on, EV charging, and just, send it off to me. Don't think you have to try and, condense it or bring it all together yourself. I think that kind of gets vetted as the document gets pulled together. Okay. Where things get put, and so just start firing. Sending me your whatever you find.
Okay, will do. All right. Good discussion. I think that with that, we've got a plan to move forward, and that would bring us to our next agenda item, which is the draft annual town meeting public hearing presentation. So Elizabeth, you're presenting this. You did not pre-circulate the two. Yeah, okay.
No, I did not. So the first one I have, which would be the additional dwelling unit. So for Kristen, I send this off to you, and you can start adding your speaker notes. I will tell you that the first round of how the order of warrant articles came out, and all of the zoning articles were only ahead of unpaid bills and one other article at the end. So I successfully pled my case, and the zoning articles did get moved up quite a bit. I think like 10 spots. So Article 31, additional dwelling units. Oops, sorry. And just starting off, what is the amendment? And then going through the reasons for the amendment. And a lot of this kind of just is pulled out of the explanation, but put into more of a bullet form. And, so when it was adopted and the special permits and the number of special permits, town meeting amending the ADU bylaw, and then, the creation of the conflicts, and then going through, and this was the comparison chart that I put together. So I don't know if this is a format everybody likes or dislikes. But so it would give, here's the current criteria A, which is lot area requirement, before the bylaw amendment, after the bylaw amendment. And I haven't done this one. I started on the actual handout of this chart, putting in a little bit of an explanation after the yes. So that's something that I will add tomorrow, Kristen. But going through the 4 criteria: lot area, criteria B, which is the size limitation, and then you have the setbacks, which Kristen already started adding speaker notes to this, which is just from the explanation, and it talks about how the height calculation got changed, where you can go 3 feet closer on one side if you add 3 feet to the other side, but the height can only be 15 feet on the minus 3 foot side. So I added that just because it's kind of complicated. So after
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking as you were going through this, is this going to be well, I'll work on it, understandable for the general public? I mean, is the main reason, and maybe you haven't gotten to that yet, is like the reason for the change?
Yep. So then we have 4th conflict is a floor area ratio, which before 2016 there wasn't any. So some of the properties that have ADUs, they may already exceed the FAR. And then, while it's not a criteria, previously it was, where the special permit expires. And then this would get into why, and then there's a missing slide.
Well, thank you for putting that together. I will take a look when you let me know.
Yeah, so I don't know, there's a missing slide in here, which to your point, Kristen, specifically talks about the in the explanation where, the planning board, so that was something Burton added when you did the explanation for the warrant article, had to do with the zoning board of appeals. So I'll add that, but that's the specific slide on why the planning board is putting forth this bylaw amendment. So the information will be in the presentation, and you can kind of play with the order and the flow however you want. And so that's
okay.
That's where I got on this one.
Thank you.
Kristen, one comment that I'll use this opportunity to throw in there. After the publication of our minutes, where we were discussing this bylaw, we received a public comment around the use of the term grandfathered, because we used that a lot in the discussion. And it was pointed out that the origin of that phrase was the laws passed in 7 southern states after the Civil War, whereby they put literacy tests in to vote, but you did not have to take a test if your grandfather was an eligible voter, which was obviously designed to keep enfranchised illiterate white men and disenfranchise people who didn't have the right, their grandfathers didn't have the right to vote. So it was pointed out that maybe that's not a great term to use in discussing these things. So that was when you're putting together your presentation, give consideration to that comment we got, if you would.
Good, thank you.
The next, you want to go, Elizabeth, run through the next one?
So I didn't get a chance to finish the formula business one, so I share, but the similar format as far as what the bylaw amendment is doing for formula business, providing at least some background. When it was first adopted in 2011, Concord Center added in 2019. And then this is where, let me bring up the one for, so Matt Johnson did the presentation for the adding Concord Center in 2019. And it is a very, it's very long. So this was the conversation I wanted the board to have. Again, it goes through the background, what the proposed amendment does, gives a map of Concord Center District, which I can add a map of the Thoreau Depot District. But then it went through and just basically was more of an education to town meeting on what is a formula business. What is a formula business? And again, we could, add out of the explanation, why do we want to add Thoreau Depot? I think that's important. There's the purpose of the bylaw. Have a slide that lists the 12 existing Thoreau Depot. And then it gives some of the background as far as the comprehensive long-range plan. This is where it gets out of my expertise, and as far as graphs, this is not something I can do. Matt Johnson is a actual wizard at this. So I didn't know if the board felt having this type of graphic data for the Thoreau Depot formula business warrant article is needed, required, or do you feel town meeting needs to be completely educated again on what a formula business is? And then back then, at the time, it was Wellfleet that, how their formula business got denied by the Attorney General. I don't think that's important for the Thoreau Depot warrant article. And then at the time in 2019, the whole section was deleted and replaced. And so that's not relevant here either. So that's
I would think third time through we can make it shorter. What was that, about 18 slides long on that presentation?
Yeah.
Linda, it's yours. You own it. You got some great examples, but
so there's no way I can be Matt. So
yeah.
We'll just erase that. But I think what it's really putting the Thoreau Business District on a platform that's on par with what we've done in Concord Center and in West Concord. So I think from my point of view, we don't need, I think we still need to educate people as to what we're asking for, but I think but I think we could probably slim down by half what you've got there.
I definitely think, need to educate, why, adding throw depot is, should be happen and why it's important. My question is whether you feel town meeting needs to be educated just on what is a formula business. And to Burton's comment, the third time through, maybe not having to go through that level.
No, I think it's, everybody goes into our commercial districts, but I don't think everybody thinks formula businesses as we do. Plus, there's a lot of turnover in town, and I wouldn't want to assume that everyone is familiar with the term. So I think maybe one
I'll add that one
explanatory
slide.
is fair to define the term. It's not a term that comes to mind for most people on a daily basis. So I think that's I would go that far. Yeah. Are there more towns that have adopted this than Concord at this point in terms of limiting? Do you have any sense of that?
I don't have a sense of, I know both Marcia and I have been contacted by, a few towns wanting, again, asking to send our Word document of these sections. But I don't know off the top of my head if anybody has actually passed something similar.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got a really good presentation to work from, and Taylor somewhat. And so Elizabeth, will you send that to Linda so she can work with that?
Yeah, I'll add, some of these slides that we went through that, are similar to Matt's, and the specific reasons why the board's doing it. So you'll probably see that tomorrow afternoon or Thursday.
Okay.
And I wonder, do we need to tie this to the Thoreau Business District in a broader sense?
You mean the other warrant article zoning?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no, because I don't want people to think that these two warrant articles are tied together, because even if the Thoreau Depot rezoning article doesn't pass, I still think this should go forward and should, stand alone and pass on its own, regardless of what happens with it.
Does this one appear before in the order?
It does.
Okay, good. Is the last one the business district?
Well, you have two citizens petitions, which would be the last ones. Currently, the order, unless the town moderator has some issues, but I'm pretty sure the order it would be the scenic roads bylaw, additional dwelling unit, formula business, Thoreau Depot, the Virginia Road rezone citizens petition, and then there's a citizens petition to amend the common open space requirements for a PRD, where instead of 50% of the common open space has to be upland, the citizens petition is to change that to 75% of the common open space has to be upland. So those two citizens will make their presentation at the public hearing on March 8th. And then whether it's, in March or, probably not till, March 22nd or your meetings in April, the board would deliberate and take a vote on, whether you recommend town meeting. What is it? But there's specific words that escape me right now, but, affirmative action or no action. Okay, that's all I have
Okay,
for those.
Great.
the next
you.
item then is the talking points for the Thoreau Depot Business District.
Yep, so I went through the FAQ and, and amended it to reflect it as this would be basically your handout material, the FAQ for an actual warrant article instead of, before it was your discussion.
Mhm.
Linda did provide me, because in my email, I asked if anybody wants to try and wordsmith some of these paragraphs to get them smaller, which Linda sent me one for the traffic, how much traffic will there be? And then another one for how much parking will there be? And so I can redistribute the FAQ with her changes for your meeting next Tuesday. But if there was any other, comments or suggestions, one thing I did add was the graphic for how height is measured, since that was a challenging point that the board and the building commissioner and I had with some people. So I just wanted the board to kind of go through this and see if there were other sections that they felt needed to be beefed up or changed, or any other FAQ, or any other question you think should be added to this.
First of all, I want to say, Linda, I thought your rewrites of those two sections were good. I liked them. The one thing that jumped out at me when I read this, and obviously we've seen this a number of times before in slightly different versions, is that we actually never say, it's implied, especially in some of the tables, what mixed use development is, but we say that that's the primary goal here, is to encourage and enable mixed use development. I was just thinking that it might make sense on, let's see what page I'm on, the section on bottom of page 2, where it says a key aspect of the proposed zoning is that it will enable and encourage mixed use development, and that's in quotes. Quotes always make me think of definitions about to follow, so maybe we could just say either as a clause at the end of that sentence, or a new sentence, that mixed use developments are, or you could say encourage mixed use development that combines business and residential uses in a single development, or something like that.
Okay, so I'll just add a one sentence definition.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that would just be helpful. Maybe
Okay.
after that first sentence or something like that. Maybe everybody knows what it is, but sometimes you forget when you're.
I think it's a good addition.
Anybody else have any other comments or thoughts on this section or on Linda's rewrites of those two provisions? I liked, I didn't read them side by side, but I did think that the traffic one was particularly, I liked yours better, Linda. I thought it was a good redo.
Yeah, I think Linda only sent it to.
Yeah, we haven't seen
yeah.
it yet, but we'll.
Oh,
Burton
okay.
and I, so
What
I
about
will.
and
It went up and down. Yeah, I think she sent it to you and you sent it to me. Okay.
what about
But
at
I
the
will-
end when it talks about COVID? Do we still need that? Because
I took that out.
okay.
Oh, no, it's still there. So that's a good question. Do you want to keep that in?
I mean, to me, I don't think, I think there are other longer term aspects that are more relevant to the just making this decision, but I would leave that open to the rest of the board. I just don't want to dilute the message with something that is, although long, still temporary.
I had my first thought was the exact same as you did, but we did receive a number of public comments, which were making the point that essentially patterns of using the commuter rail have forever changed because of COVID, and it's no longer such a bright idea to do planning around the commuter rail. So maybe this comment doesn't quite go to that, but I think that the comment people will be making likely comments at town meeting about how COVID has changed the way we do things.
So maybe this whole paragraph needs to be rewritten to, I'm
Maybe.
not sure. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
this is more the temporary focus, right? But
Yes, this is more the temporary.
Yeah. To me, if there's but then that would seem to indicate that traffic is going to lessen because commuting is lessening.
Yep.
So perhaps it goes closer to the traffic part and say, we acknowledge that lifestyles are changing, as that kind of thing. So I can give it some thought. I mean, I just wanted to make sure that a reaction wasn't, well, if COVID's going away, do we still need this? Yes or no? So, but I see what you're saying now. We were trying to address kind of a what's perceived as a change. Go ahead.
Why don't you rephrase it to just talk about long-term trends then instead? And it can be a wink nudge to COVID, but it doesn't have to be about COVID.
Because to me, I don't know that we have long-term trends yet. So
well, I think everybody's speculating. I agree. I think it's armchair stuff at this point.
And what I think what things that we do have long-term trends about is housing reports and those have been done for many years, housing studies of what we have in Concord and what we need and population, like those are all actual trends that we have been reported for quite some time, and I just don't want this to kind of get conflated to me. But I mean, I'll give it some thought, and I don't want to like reword it just to keep it. I want to make sure that it's adding value and clarifying points that are made, and in particular, like you're saying, addressing, since so many people did come and give us so many good comments over the time. I want to make sure that this document kind of gives credit to the comments that people made and our responses.
how about for this? Give it some thought. If you think we should weave some changes into these last two paragraphs, I'm all for it.
So to Kristen's point, now that she's talking about it and looking at this, I'd probably advocate for this is a zoning bylaw warrant article, and I think the reasons that the board started this endeavor 2.5 years ago, had nothing to do with COVID, and people are going to work from home probably a little bit more. Some people will, not everybody, but to Kristen's point, that kind of does indicate that there will be some reduction in traffic, or let's say the parking for the commuter rail, it won't be, you'll be able to find a spot at for the 7:30 train instead of having to get the 6:30 train. So I think removing this section is great, and I think taking some of these trends, as Andrew said, not attributing it to COVID, but Kristen is right. All the housing studies, housing costs are just going to continue to go up. And there is definitely a demand for mixed use development near transit. That has nothing to do with COVID, and that's been a trend for, for many, many years. So I think taking, parts of this section and, putting it up in the rest of the document would work well.
Okay.
So I can try and do that for the next round. And Kristen, if you want to kind of think about it as well and just send me your thoughts, I can put those in and get it off to the board.
You're gonna send out the newly updated one with Linda's changes?
Yep. Yep. Everybody will get that. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Wednesday. So Wednesday, I'm going to try and get the packet out early. I have meetings all tomorrow morning, so it might be Thursday morning, but to try and give everybody a little bit more time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think then that brings us to the draft meeting minutes from January 25th. Does anybody, I reviewed them. Does anybody have any edits or changes they would suggest to those minutes? All right. And I'll just jump into making a motion that the board approve as drafted the meeting minutes of the January 25th planning board meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, I'll move to a vote then with that second. Linda, how do you vote?
Yes.
Nathan?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Kristen? Can you say that with your mute button off? Oh,
Yes.
thank you, Kristen. And I'm a yes, so that's approved. Thank you very much. And then the next item is the planning board liaison town planner updates. I think as I reported last time, the Community Preservation Committee has approved their warrant articles, so that's all set. That work is done, so nothing to report from there. I was invited to speak about the Thoreau Depot Business District to the First Tuesday group at First Parish, which I did last week, if that was the first Tuesday, and also had been asked, was asked earlier today to talk about the Thoreau Depot stuff and with the town governance committee of the league, so the League of Women Voters. So we'll likely be speaking there. All right.
Great. Are you getting some constructive feedback or comments, or are you hearing any similar comments that we've heard in public meeting or anything different?
I would say that well, at that particular presentation at the First Tuesday meeting, they were probably a little bit more on the positive or just asking questions about the proposal, though with some questions about the phrase that stuck in my mind, unintended consequences and things like that. I can tell you that I've had a number of conversations around town, meeting people who I would say it's pretty even split amongst people who are raising concerns with the same things we heard very much at the public forum, generally around there still remains a conception that there's an actual project that's going to be built. So I've had those conversations, and other people that had gone out of their way to say that they're really in favor of it. So that's been my experience. It's remarkable to me the number of people at very different, events around town are informed about it and want to talk to me at length when they find out I'm on the planning board.
Well, that's exciting. And so then the public and everybody, when you go to the events, they know about the public hearing, right? That's coming up.
You mean the people that I've been talking to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've already heard, so they don't really have to go to the public hearing, but I mean, just so they can, because that's going to be their only debate, probably.
Yeah.
I know it hasn't been decided yet for town meeting, but since recent meetings have gone so well, I hope that town meeting is still nice streamlined format.
From what I heard, it's still a one-day event.
That's awesome.
All right. Any other liaison updates, or Elizabeth, any updates from you?
No, last Monday. Yeah. Last Monday. Got the Mass Trails grant submitted for the Assabet River Bridge and Trail, and our consultant team from GPI helped pull a lot of that together along with the architects at La Dahlman. It's a pretty good, strong application. So I'm hopeful.
Wonderful.
And there's a shortfall of about $110,000, which originally was going to be in the capital plan, but there was over $15 million in requests for the capital plan. So the bridge did not make it out of that process, but it is still in the list of items to be funded out of the ARPA funds. So at this point, I'm still going on, the strong goal that we'll have all the funds to move forward in the next phase. Also learned today that for the bridge on the I'm going to say the west side. So where Concord Park is, on that side, along the river, there is a sewer main, a public, water and sewer main that between now and, let's say, everything goes wonderful and funding gets on the tip, and maybe I'm hoping, like 2025 would be a dream. But that sewer line, it was installed, I think, somewhere around 1920. It's a type of clay sewer pipe. So it takes all the flow from Beharrell Street, 300 310 Baker Ave, the hotel, Concord Park. It's heavily used. So water and sewer may actually take that opportunity, when the bridge finally goes forward for construction, to update that pipe or line that pipe. So that was kind of a good thing to hear this morning. So and my last update is the $75,000 for hiring a consultant to assist with updating the subdivision rules and regs is in the FY23 budget. So
Okay.
Budget passes town meeting. That will July 1st, we can kick off, that's another project we can kick off. So
Okay.
I'll, between now and July 1st, be looking for, we'll have to send out a request for proposals. And so I'll probably ask one or two of planning board members to participate in, that process.
Okay. When you guys, as you were talking about the Concord Park and work around there, do you have any updates on when they're going to be redoing Commonwealth Avenue through West Concord and making those sidewalk improvements?
I don't know for sure. It was my understanding. I thought it was going to be in spring.
This spring. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm fairly certain, because we informed Patrick Cleary at 13B Commonwealth Ave to at least once road opening permits are being issued, to at least go through and stub out the connections for that building. Because once a public road gets paved, there's a 5-year moratorium on any, trenching or digging up of the road.
Nice, okay. So that's a good schedule. It always seems like it's next year, but I guess it finally is next year. Okay. Any other comments? Any input? That's our last item, except for general public comment. So with that, we have a number of people who are with us tonight. Is anybody has a public comment they'd like to make? They can raise their hand. I think if you're on a phone, we've got one. I think you can press star, is it 9?
9.
Star 9. I'm not seeing any hands get raised. Okay. We finished in 1 hour and 36 minutes, which is pretty good. Thank you everybody for their time and attention and preparation. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Have a good
Good
night, everybody.
night.
Have a good
Night.
night.
Night.